Well, hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and this is part 2 of my series on wood carving basics. And this video I'm going to be focusing on a little bit about safety. I'm going to be talking about wood grain, characteristics of wood grain, and also get into the basic carving cuts. There's 4 of them, so we'll be getting into showing you that. So join with me, and let's get started. Okay, just a quick word about safety, and one thing we want to make sure that we do is start with a very sharp knife. And I'll do another video, maybe part 3 video on knife sharpening and polishing, but you want to start off there. A sharp knife is a safe knife. And then I also like to wear a carving glove on my left hand. This particular glove is made by Archon X, I guess that's how you pronounce it. But this glove is really nice. Some carving gloves don't really grip very well, but this has a material on it that's very grippy, so it holds the material very well, and it also fits pretty tight with my hand, which I like. On the my right hand, I like to use this tape that I get from the drugstore, and it's cheaper to buy it that way. You can buy carving tape from the woodworking store, but I like to wrap my thumb and forefinger with this tape just to, be careful. I'm not adamant about using a carving glove, and you'll see a lot of experienced wood carvers not wearing gloves. The gloves can protect you, of course, from, slicing cuts, but they're, not going to protect you if the knife comes in straight on like that. So just be aware it's not 100% proof protection. Remember that the proper, technique is always the first line of defense. If you, follow good carving techniques, a carving glove really shouldn't be needed. But, stuff happens, and sometimes the mind wanders. It happens to me. And that's when, a good carving glove comes into the picture. Bear in mind that accidents probably will happen, so make sure that you have some Band-Aids or first aid kit on hand. All right, let's talk about wood grain for a minute and how it interacts with your carving blade and your carving. So let's talk about some carving concepts, and I think these are very important for understanding wood grain and just, make your carving a little bit more pleasant. Generally, when we're carving and we're looking at wood, we got a basswood block here, and I got a piece of butternut a spoon blank, and the grain direction is going this way. So on the spoon, generally always going in this direction of the spoon. Basswood block, normally when you're carving figurines, it's going this way. So this direction, if you're taking your knife and you're carving this way, you're considered carving, along the grain. If you turn the knife and go this direction, you're going across the grain. And then up here, when you're kind of carving on the ends, you're kind of carving over. If you're trying to round over, you're working more with that end grain down here at the ends of the wood. So anyway, those are just kind of general terms. When people say they are carving with the grain, what I think they really mean is they're carving downhill on the grain. So what do I mean by that? Okay, take a look at this diagram from my carving ebook, and I'll leave you a link to it. It's a free ebook just that I made from PowerPoint or Word. But when the blade comes down on the grain, the blade is supported by the fibers, and it slices the fibers. This leaves a really smooth cut. When the blade changes direction and starts going uphill, the blade will catch in the fibers like a wedge and begin splitting the wood. Kind of like, if you think about chopping firewood. This also happens when you're going across the grain. So I'm a wood turner as well. When I'm turning wooden spindles on the lathe, the chisel is actually mainly cutting across the grain. But you have to make sure that the bevel of your chisel is supported. This is what, wood turners mean by riding the bevel. And so it's the same thing that applies with wood carving. Okay, so here I am with my spoon blank. And again, the grain direction is going like this. And if I say come and carve from this point down, I'm going downhill on the grain. You can see that the knife, the bevel of the knife is supported by the fibers. I'm getting a nice smooth cut. But when I get kind of to the bottom of this and start to transition out, look what happens. The blade starts getting entangled with the fibers and catching, and then it will start to split, kind of like the firewood analogy I was using. So what do you do when it gets down here and it gets stuck in the fibers? Well, you can turn around and come from the other direction. Again, you're kind of coming downhill now from the other direction. Switch directions, you're coming back downhill. Turn it around, you're coming back downhill and getting to the bottom here. And so you can see you're kind of making this as a transition point. So this could be, if you're making spoons, we'll talk about this later, maybe in a future video. You can make a hard, stop cut here, and the transition could be very hard. Or you can continue to do, this back and forth kind of transition and smooth this out. This transition becomes a smooth transition. You may have to come back later, maybe with sandpaper or a wooden rasp or something like that, and smooth this out. But as you can see, again, if I'm coming down in this direction, I'm coming down on the fibers, going downhill, but when I get to the bottom, knife is getting stuck. So I'm gonna have to come back from the other direction. So again, just something to keep in mind if you're carving a wooden caricature, a wooden spoon. Understanding how the grain works is very important. Okay, now that we understand wood grain a little bit better, let's talk about the 4 basic cuts of wood carving. Okay, now let's talk about the 4 basic cuts of wood carving. And you'll see these cuts. These are pretty common, well-known, established cuts for you use them probably 90%, of all your carvings, whether they be caricature carvings, they could be for spoon carving. I find these very helpful for the caricature carving. Probably the first one that comes up is going to be the stop cut. And I probably use this, a lot with the caricature carvings, but you simply, what you do is push the blade in, straight into the wood fibers. And then you use our second cut, and that's the push cut. So now you're going to come downhill on the grains we talked about before, and the blade stops at the stop cut. So now what you see, what we're creating maybe is the bottom of the nose for a wood spirit, or it could be for, defining a hat, perhaps. Just what you're going to use, these stop and push cut combinations are going to be very useful for caricature carvings, okay? And they create these transitions like I was talking about. Maybe you want to create a hat for a gnome or a wood spirit, or create a brow, or create the bottom of the nose and the mouth area. So you're going to use a combination of that. Now the 4th cut is what I'd call a pairing cut, and all I'm doing here is I'm changing the direction of the blade coming back toward me. And I'm holding this with my left hand, and thumb is opposing it right here, but it's below the plane of the knife where the knife is going to come out. So you got to make sure you position your thumb right. Even though I've got the carving tape on there, I want to always use proper technique. So when we bring the knife back, we're pairing cut. And this again comes in handy if we're trying to maybe taper the wood up to a point. Maybe we're trying to create, a hat for a wood spirit or a gnome. Now you can also go back to your stop cut. We're going to go straight in, and then you can use that pairing cut to come back on your stop cut. And again, you can continue with these stop cuts, you can continue to make those deeper. So you're taking off layers of wood, and you can vary the depth on those cuts as you want them. Now this next cut is called a V cut, and it can be done with a V tool, but I like to try to trying to get better with using the knife on these. As you can see, you basically come in at an angle and basically you're creating kind of a stop cut, you know, on an angle, and then you come back and you carve up to that stop point, that stop cut, and that creates a V. And again, you can use a V tool easily. It's probably easier to use a V tool, but the good thing with the knife is that you can, you know, customize this V. You can make it wider, you can make it narrower, you can make it deeper. And by using a knife, you know, you can vary that V cut a lot more. The V tool comes in handy though. It's easy to use, and so it's another option. Anyway, you know, all these cuts are very useful in your carving. There are going to be probably some other techniques or cuts that we'll get into maybe with the spoon carving, maybe in a later video. But, you know, even with the spoon carving, I use a lot of these cuts as well, and just understanding how the knife interacts with the grain is very important. But you know, you'll use these cuts for most of your carvings. In part 3, I'm going to try to make a part 3 video, and in that I'm going to talk a little bit more about the choice of wood for different projects that you're going to be doing, and I'm going to show you how to keep your knife sharp. So thanks for watching, everybody. Appreciate it. We'll see you in the next video.